Vale had one inheritance left in the world, a cracked brass compass on a chain. It had belonged to her mother. It did not point north. It trembled, clicked, and always dragged its needle toward the same impossible direction, as if it were listening to something buried under the earth. Mara used to think it was broken. Then, on the coldest night of her life, while she was sleeping in the back of a dented Nissan Sentra behind a shuttered laundromat outside Tacoma, a cream-colored envelope found her. Inside was a rusted iron key, a lawyer's letter, and 7 words written by a woman Mara had been told was dead before she was born. 3 locks hold the foundation. Do not sell. 48 hours later, Mara stood in front of Blackpine House, a half-rotted mansion on the Washington coast, while a man in a cashmere coat offered her $30,000 to walk away from it. She should have taken the money, because beneath that ruined house was a vault no one had opened in 90 years, and inside that vault was enough gold, land, and stolen proof to make her richer than anyone in Greyhaven. It would also expose the crime that built her family, and before the week ended, the same man who offered to buy the house would set it on fire while Mara was locked underneath it. But the story does not begin with fire. It begins with a girl who had nowhere to go, holding a broken compass that had been pointing to home her entire life. Mara had been homeless for 3 months when the envelope arrived. The back seat of the Nissan Sentra had become her bedroom, her closet, and sometimes her fortress. The car had 204,000 miles on it, a cracked side mirror, and a passenger window that would not roll all the way up. On dry nights, that window was only annoying. On wet nights, it turned the entire car into a damp metal box that smelled of old vinyl mildew and the peanut butter crackers Mara ate when she could not afford anything else. Her mother, Julia Vale, had died in March. A warehouse elevator failed during a night shift in Kent. The company called it an accident. Mara called it the sound of the universe, removing the only person who had ever stood between her and the dark. Her stepfather, Owen Pike, waited until the funeral was over before changing the locks on the apartment. He kept the insurance payout, told Mara she was 18 and legally on her own, then left her clothes in trash bags by the dumpster. Mara did not scream. She did not break a window. She did not call him a thief to his face. She had already learned that poor people do not get to be dramatic for very long. Drama costs energy. Survival requires inventory. 1 sleeping bag, 2 hoodies, a phone with a cracked screen, $46, and her mother's brass compass. That compass was the one thing Julia had never explained. It was small, old, and heavy, made of tarnished brass, with a glass face cracked across the center like a lightning scar. The lid was engraved with a pine tree, whose roots twisted around a tiny letter L when Mara opened it. The needle did not swing north. It jerked west toward the coast, then trembled there stubborn and wrong. Julia had kept it in the drawer beside her bed for as long as Mara could remember. When Mara was little, she used to ask where it came from. Julia always answered the same way, from a house I chose not to live in. Then she would close the drawer. After the lockout, Mara wore the compass on a chain under her sweatshirt, not because she believed it was valuable, because it was weight, because it was proof that her mother had existed, because when you lose your address, your bed, your family, and your future in a single week, you cling to whatever refuses to leave. Her routine narrowed into a map of small mercies. The grocery store bathroom on 6th Avenue stayed unlocked until 11. The public library opened at 9 and had outlets behind the local history shelves. The bakery on Harbor Street threw away unsold rolls in sealed bags if you arrived after closing. But before the trash truck came, the laundromat behind which she slept had cameras facing the front, but not the alley. Mara learned how to disappear. She learned which parking lots were safe enough to sleep in, which men watched too long, which employees would pretend not to see her, and which ones enjoyed the small power of making her leave. The worst part was not hunger. Hunger was simple. It came, it hurt, it passed, and it came again. The worst part was becoming a problem before she became a person. A girl waiting for a bathroom key. A girl charging her phone in a corner. A girl in the back seat of a car. People looked at her and performed a quick private calculation. Nobody asked her name. So when Mrs. Albright at the Tacoma Public Library walked to Mara's computer station one Tuesday morning and said, "Are you Mara Vale?" Mara almost ran. The librarian was carrying a thick cream-colored envelope. "This was forwarded through county outreach," Mrs. Albright said gently. The sender marked it urgent. Mara looked at the envelope before touching it. Bellwether and Klein, attorneys at law. Estate Division, Greyhaven, Washington. She had never heard of the firm. She had never heard of Greyhaven. The envelope felt expensive. That was the first thing she noticed. The paper had weight. The seal had been pressed, not printed. When she opened it, 3 things slid onto the desk: a formal legal letter, a rusted iron key tied with black thread, and a folded note written in shaky blue ink. The legal letter said that Lydia Ward, described as Mara's great-aunt, had died at 91. It said Lydia had named Mara Vale as sole beneficiary of Blackpine House and all assets held under the Ward family trust. It said Mara had the right to take immediate possession of the property while probate proceeded. Sole beneficiary. Mara read those words the way a starving person reads a menu in a window. Then she opened the handwritten note. "My Mara, if this reaches you, I failed to find you in time. Your mother asked me to stay buried. I obeyed her because I loved her, and because I was a coward. Blackpine is yours now. It will look dead from the road. It is not. A house can rot on the surface and still hold its foundation. 3 locks hold that foundation. Find the hearth lock, find the earth lock, find the first breath lock. Do not sell the house. Do not trust anyone who says you're... And when the doors open, remember this. A fortune can save you, but a lie will own you." Your grandmother, Lydia. Mara read the last line again. Your grandmother, the lawyer's letter said great. Aunt, the note said grandmother. That single word pressed into her mind like a thumb on a bruise. Julia had told Mara there was no family, no grandparents, no cousins, no house, no history, just them, just us, little bird. "That's enough." Mara called Bellwether and Klein from the library phone. A receptionist confirmed the will, the address, and the unusual instruction Lydia had left for the firm. "She said to tell you the roof has given up, but the ground has not." Mara hung up, walked out to the Nissan, and drove west with $11 in her pocket and the brass compass ticking against her ribs. Greyhaven appeared at dusk through coastal fog. It was the kind of town that looked as if it had been built in confidence and then slowly apologized for existing. Brick storefronts with faded signs, a boarded seafood cannery, a marina half full of fishing boats and half full of rainwater. The old prosperity was still visible in the bones, carved cornices, tall windows, a courthouse too grand for the population that remained. Blackpine House sat beyond the town, up a private road that climbed through wet cedar and hemlock until the trees opened onto a bluff. Mara stopped the car. For a moment, she forgot to breathe. The house was enormous. 3 stories of weather, blackened wood, turrets, broken dormers, and ivy thick enough to look muscular. The wraparound porch sagged in the middle. The roof slumped over the west wing like a tired shoulder. Several windows had been smashed and covered from the inside with boards. A stone chimney rose from the center of the structure, dark and square, like a watchtower. Behind the house, beyond a rusted fence, Mara could see 4 headstones, a family cemetery. She had imagined shelter, a bed, a lock heat. Blackpine House looked like a dare. Then the compass under her sweatshirt clicked. Mara pulled it out. The needle, which had always pointed west, now spun once and settled straight toward the house. Not north home. She got out of the car. The front porch groaned under her weight. The door opened with the iron key, though the lock resisted as if offended to be asked after so many years. Inside, the foyer smelled of mildew, dust, and old smoke. A grand staircase climbed into darkness. Furniture stood under sheets like bodies, waiting for identification. Wallpaper peeled in strips from the walls. Water dripped somewhere deep in the house with the patience of a clock. There was no electricity, no running water. Mara found the driest room on the first floor, a small sitting room with a stone fireplace and a door she could barricade with a bookcase. She unrolled her sleeping bag, placed the compass on the mantel, and sat with her back to the wall. For the first time in 3 months she was inside. The room was cold. The house was rotten. The wind came through cracks in the window frames. But the door was between her and the world. That was enough to make her cry. The footsteps came the next morning. Slow, heavy, above her. Mara woke instantly. One hand closing around the tire iron she kept beside her sleeping bag. She held still, listening. The steps crossed the second floor, stopped, started again. Not mice, not rain, not an old house settling. Someone was walking upstairs. Mara climbed the staircase with the tire iron in one hand and her foot. The second floor was worse than the first. Ceiling plaster had collapsed in several rooms. Black mold crawled up the corners. Rainwater pooled in warped depressions of the floor. At the end of the hall, she found a bedroom door open. Inside was a portrait, a woman with silver hair, a long neck, and eyes so stern they almost hid their sadness. She sat in a high-backed chair with Blackpine House painted behind her in summer light. Lydia Ward. Someone had slashed the canvas from shoulder to hip. Fresh boot prints marked the dust below it. Mara backed out of the room and ran downstairs. That was when the front door opened. The man standing in the foyer lifted both hands. "Easy," he said. "I'm not here to scare you." He was about 27, with rain-dark hair, work boots, and a tool belt hanging from one hand. His jacket was patched at the elbows. There was sawdust on his sleeve. "Who are you?" Mara demanded. "Noah Flint, restoration contractor. Lydia hired me last winter to stabilize the foundation." Mara tightened her grip on the tire iron. "How did you know who I was?" Noah paused. Only half a second, but Mara saw it. "Lydia showed me a picture," he said. "She said if a young woman in a beat-up car showed up after she died, I should make sure the floors didn't kill her." The answer was reasonable. That made Mara trust it less. She called the law firm. Bellwether and K. Line confirmed that Noah Flint had been hired by Lydia Ward and had access to the basement for foundation work. They confirmed he was still owed money. They confirmed he had a key. Mara lowered the tire iron but kept it in her hand. "You knock before entering," she said. "You work in the basement. You do not go upstairs. You do not touch my things." Noah nodded, understood. Then he looked toward the road. "Has Everett Stone been here yet?" Mara did not like the way he asked. "Who?" Noah's face tightened. "The man who has wanted this land for 20 years. Everett Stone arrived that afternoon. He came in a black Range Rover that looked too clean for the muddy road. He was tall, silver-haired, and dressed in a coat that probably cost more than Mara's car. His smile was polished flat, like a blade. "Mara Vale," he said before she had spoken a word. "I'm sorry for your loss." The warning in Lydia's note moved through Mara like cold water. Do not trust anyone who says your name before you do. Everett offered $30,000 for the house, the land, and all contents. Cash up front. No inspection, no waiting for probate. "Blackpine is a liability," he said. "It will swallow money for years. I can save you from that." Mara looked at the rotting porch, the broken windows, the cemetery and the trees. For one trembling second, $30,000 looked like oxygen. Then the compass in her pocket clicked. "No," Mara said. Everett's smile did not move, but something behind it did. "You're very young," he said. "Young people often mistake burden for destiny, and old men mistake other people's property for opportunity." Everett studied her for a long moment. Then he handed her a business card. "When you understand what you've inherited, call me." He drove away slowly, as if leaving only because he had decided to. 2 days later, Mara found the first hidden room. It was not really a room. It was a space behind the shelves in Lydia's study. The study had survived better than the rest of the house, sealed behind a swollen oak door and curtains thick with dust. Newspapers were stacked in towers. Ledgers filled the desk. Boxes of old correspondence were labeled by year in Lydia's precise hand. Mara spent hours sorting through the papers. Greyhaven zoning disputes, appeals to the county, letters from attorneys, photographs of the waterfront from decades earlier, and Everett Stone's name appearing again and again like mold. Stone Coastal Holdings, Stone Development Group. Emergency Condemnation Petition. Historic Preservation Challenge. Adverse Title Review. Noah helped move a warped bookcase away from the west wall. When it shifted, a floorboard beneath it cracked and sprang upward, revealing a metal-lined compartment. Inside was a leather journal, a locked iron box, and a hand-drawn plan of Blackpine House. Mara opened the journal first. The first page was dated November 1986. Everett's father came again. He believes the Ward ledger belongs to his family because his father stole the harbor rights and called the theft industry. He does not understand that Blackpine was built to remember what courts forget. The foundation is not stone, it is evidence. Mara read the line twice. The foundation. Noah leaned over the floor plan. 3 red circles had been drawn on it. One at the parlor fireplace, one at the cemetery. One marked only by a tiny compass symbol and the words "First Breath." Beneath the drawing, Lydia had written, 3 locks, 3 keys. The vault opens only when the house, the earth, and the child agree. Mara touched the compass hanging under her sweatshirt. The first key was in the fireplace. Not the small sitting-room fireplace where Mara had slept, but the great parlor hearth beneath the central chimney. The stones were dark basalt, fitted tightly together. Noah noticed the changed mortar first. "This section was opened and sealed again," he said. "Decades ago, but not by the original mason." Mara pried the stones loose herself. Behind them was a copper-lined cavity holding a sealed steel tube. Inside the tube lay a brass key with spiral teeth and a packet of preserved documents. The documents showed that Lydia had spent 40 years buying shares of Stone Timber and Port Authority holdings through shell companies, blind trusts, and old family proxy. Not enough to be noticed. A little every year, a little more when the market dropped, a little more when Everett borrowed against the company. By the time she died, Lydia Ward controlled 52% of the voting shares. Mara understood the number before she understood the power. 52% meant Lydia had not been hiding from Everett Stone. She had patiently, one fraction at a time. "He doesn't know," Noah said softly. Mara folded the documents back into their sleeve. "He knows enough to be scared." The second key was under the blank grave. The Ward cemetery stood behind the house, inside a leaning iron fence. 3 stones had names: Augustus Ward, Elspeth Ward, Lydia Ward. The 4th stone was blank. No dates, no name, no carved blessing, just granite. Mara waited until midnight to dig. She told herself it was because Everett might be watching the road. The deeper truth was that digging into a grave in daylight felt like an argument with the dead, and she was not ready to be seen losing it. Noah helped. He brought shovels and a lantern. He said little. 3 feet down, the shovel struck metal. There was no coffin, no body, only a steel case sealed in waxed cloth. Inside lay the second spiral key and a photograph. A young woman sat on the porch of Blackpine House, holding a newborn wrapped in a yellow blanket. Her hair was dark, her face was guarded, her eyes were Mara's eyes. On the back, Lydia had written, "My daughter. Laurel, first day home. 1984. Mara sat in the wet grass with the photograph in her lap. Her mother's name had not been Julia. It had been Laurel Ward, the woman who raised Mara in Tacoma, who worked night shifts and cut coupons and avoided every question about childhood, had once been the daughter of Blackpine House. Laurel had run. She had changed her name, built a small life, hidden the compass in a drawer, and told her child that family began and ended with them. Mara thought she felt betrayed. Then she looked at the blank grave and understood. Lydia had buried an empty stone for a living daughter because that was the only way she could survive the loss. Laurel had not left because she did not love her mother. She had left because some inheritances are built like cages. The third key had been against Mara's chest the entire time. First breath, the compass. Not where Laurel was born, but what she carried when she left. The object that followed her into her new life. The thing Lydia knew her daughter would keep, even if she abandoned everything else. Mara did not open it that night. She could not. The compass was the last thing in the world that still felt like her mother's hand. The next morning, a woman named Celia Stone came to Blackpine. Everett's wife arrived in a white sedan, wearing a beige coat and a smile calibrated to look tired rather than wealthy. She introduced herself as separated from Everett, frightened by his obsession, and willing to help. "I know what he has done," Celia said. "The forged petitions, the threats, the county officials. I can protect you. Then she handed Mara a medical file. It claimed Lydia had suffered severe dementia before signing her will. If Everett files this, Celia said, your inheritance could be frozen. But if you show me what Lydia left, I can build your defense before he moves. Mara studied the document. The language was clinical. The signature looked official. But Celia had made one mistake. She called Blackpine the asset. Not the house. Not your grandmother's home, the asset. Mara had spent 3 months being assessed as an inconvenience, a liability, a problem. She knew when a human being had disappeared behind a transaction. I'll think about it, Mara said. From the bluff above the road, Mara watched Celia's car leave Blackpine, turn away from town, and disappear into the private drive that led to Everett Stone's coastal estate. Celia was not separated. She was deployed. That night, Mara slept with the keys in her pocket and the compass in her fist. At 2:06 in the morning, she woke to a soft electronic click. Not the house, not the rain. A phone camera. Mara opened her eyes without moving. Noah stood at the mantel, photographing Lydia's floor plan. His face in the phone glow looked empty of apology. Focused, workmanlike. Mara sat up. How much? Noah froze. How much is Everett paying you? For a second, Mara thought he would lie. Then his shoulders dropped. 40,000. The words landed quietly. That made them worse. Noah had been hired by Lydia. That part was true. But after Lydia grew weaker, Everett approached him, paid him to stay close. Watch the house. Report what Mara found. Did you send the pictures? Mara asked. No. Give me the phone. He did. Mara deleted the images. She found messages from Everett. Has she opened the heart? Has she found the second? Does she know about the column? Noah had not answered. That did not save him. Get out, Mara said. Mara, listen. No, leave your key. Get out of my house. Noah placed Lydia's basement key on the mantel. His hands shook. I was going to betray you, he said. Then I read her journals. Then I watched you dig up your own mother's name from a grave. I kept telling myself I'd stop before it mattered. It matters now. He nodded once and left. When his truck disappeared down the road, Blackpine House became very still. Mara was alone with 2 keys, a locked compass, and the knowledge that everyone who came smiling was trying to take something. Everett came at dawn. He did not knock. The front door exploded inward under a sledgehammer. The man holding it was huge, bald, and thick through the shoulders, with a scar pulling one side of his mouth down. Behind him came Everett, Celia, and 2 younger men carrying crowbars. Mara stood in the foyer with the tire iron in her hand. This is my house, she said. Everett's face had lost its polish. Underneath was panic dressed as rage. This house is a stolen archive, he said. My grandfather built this town. Your family buried his legacy under rotten timber. Your grandfather forged harbor rights and stole land. My grandfather created value. Your family hoarded it. Lydia bought your company, Mara said. 52%. I have the certificates. The effect was immediate. Everett went white. Celia stopped breathing. Then Everett turned to the man with the sledgehammer. Find them. Mara ran. She cut through the kitchen into the narrow service passage. The big man chased her, cursing as his shoulders scraped the wall. Mara burst into the dining room and remembered Noah's warning from the day before. The center joists were rotten. She hugged the wall and sprinted around the edge. The big man did not. His third step punched through the floor with a crack like a tree splitting in winter. He dropped waist deep into the crawl space, roaring, the sledgehammer skidding away. Mara reached the basement stairs. She slammed the iron door behind her and threw the bolt. For 1 minute, she thought she had bought time. Then Everett's voice came through the floor. "She's under us. Burn it." The first smoke was thin and oily. Gasoline, Mara backed down into the basement, coughing as gray threads of smoke seeped between the floorboards. Above her, flames began with a whisper, then a hungry rush. The basement was all brick columns, dirt floor, exposed beams, and old pipe. At its center stood the great square support column beneath the chimney. Noah had spent months reinforcing it. Lydia's journals had called it the heart of the foundation. Mara pulled the compass from her neck. Her hands shook so hard the chain rattled. The lid opened. The crooked needle trembled, not toward the house now, but toward the central column. Mara looked closely for the first time. The cracked glass was not merely cracked. It was cut along a seam. She pressed the pine engraving on the lid. Nothing. She pressed the letter L hidden in the roots. The back panel clicked open. Inside, beneath a folded strip of oilcloth, was the third spiral key. Mara laughed once. It came out half cough, half sob. Then she saw the problem. The vault was in the column. The smoke was filling the basement. The house above her was burning. She had all 3 keys and no air. Mara ran her hands over the central column until she found it, a section of brick with a different pattern, tighter and cleaner than the rest. 3 circular depressions formed a triangle. She pushed the first key in and turned. A click sounded deep inside the column. Second key. Another click. Third key. For a breath. Nothing happened. Then the column groaned. Steel bolts dragged back. A hidden door faced with brick swung outward, exhaling air that smelled cold, dry, and ancient. Mara pointed her flashlight inside. Gold caught the beam. Not coins in a pirate chest, not movie treasure. Stacked ingots sealed in glass cylinders, leather portfolios, bundles of bonds, property deeds, ledgers wrapped in oilskin, a century of wealth preserved inside the hollow heart of Blackpine House. Mara stepped into the vault and saw at the very back a second door. Not for treasure, for escape. Lydia had not only built a vault, she had built a way out. Mara shoved the portfolios into her backpack, grabbed the nearest ledger, and pushed through the rear hatch into a narrow tunnel braced with fresh timber. Noah. This was what he had been building under the foundation. Not just reinforcement, an exit. Mara crawled through the tunnel as fire moved above her and smoke pressed behind her. The passage climbed through wet earth, tight enough to scrape her shoulders. Twice she thought it would collapse. Twice she kept moving because stopping meant becoming another secret under Blackpine. The tunnel ended in the woods. Mara kicked open a plywood hatch and fell into cold rain. Sirens wailed in the distance. Noah was waiting by the tree line, blood running from a cut above his eyebrow, his phone in his hand. "I went to Everett," he said. "Told him I had the photos. Recorded him ordering the break, in the forged medical file, the fire, everything. Then I called state police." He held out the phone. Mara looked at him. Betrayal and rescue stood in the same man, and there was no easy place to put either one. She took the phone. "I don't forgive you," she said. "I know." Blackpine House burned behind them, smoke folding into the rain. "Will the foundation hold?" Mara asked. Noah looked at the house. Lydia made sure it would. The fire department saved the structure. The foyer and dining room were destroyed, the staircase charred, the east wing gutted. But the central column held, the basement held, the vault held. Everett Stone was arrested, trying to leave by the South Road. Celia was in the passenger seat with a portfolio of forged medical records on her lap. The big man with the sledgehammer was pulled from the dining room floor, furious and bleeding. The other two men were caught in the woods. The recording on Noah's phone was enough to turn a fire into a criminal conspiracy. The documents in Mara's backpack were enough to turn a local feud into a state investigation. But the ledger she had grabbed from the vault was the thing that changed everything. It did not make the wards look innocent. It made everyone look guilty. The ledger was dated 1931 and belonged to Samuel Ward, Lydia's father. Inside were harbor rights, bank receipts, timber transfers, and an attached confession. Samuel Ward admitted that Everett Stone's grandfather had forged transfer documents to steal the Ward family's waterfront and timber access during the Depression. Then Samuel admitted what he had done in return. He had set fire to the county records, annex, to destroy the forged deeds before they could be certified. The fire spread. A night clerk named Jonah Bell died inside. Several local families lost records, deposits, and claims they never recovered. Samuel saved his family's proof and hid the assets in Blackpine's foundation. He also killed a man. Mara sat on the wet gravel outside the burned house and read the confession until the words blurred. Now she understood why her mother had run. Laurel Ward had not fled poverty. She had fled a fortune with blood under it. Lydia had protected the wealth and buried the shame. Laurel had rejected both and built a life small enough to feel clean. And Mara, who had spent 3 months with nothing, was now holding the choice both women had failed to survive: hide the confession and become rich. Reveal it and let the truth take whatever it demanded. The state detective warned her. If these assets were preserved through a crime, civil claims may follow. Restitution, heirs litigation. You could lose millions. Mara looked at Blackpine House, at the smoke-stained walls, at the foundation that had held because someone had finally opened it. A foundation only matters, she said, if it can carry the truth. She handed over the confession. The trials took 4 months. Everett Stone was convicted of arson, conspiracy, breaking and entering, fraud, and money laundering through stone development contracts. The recording destroyed him. His own voice, calm and furious, ordered the fire and explained exactly how the forged dementia file would be used. Celia Stone claimed she had acted under fear of her husband. Investigators found accounts in her name holding money from the same fraudulent contracts. Fear did not explain the numbers. She was convicted of fraud and obstruction. Noah Flint was not charged for recording Everett. His cooperation mattered. His betrayal remained. The vault became national news for 3 days. Then regional news for 3 weeks. Then a story people in Greyhaven would tell for the rest of their lives. The gold was valued at $4.2 million. The bonds and certificates added another $2.9 million after authentication. The harbor deeds, voting shares, and development claims pushed the estate near $13.8 million before restitution. Then came the descendants. Families who had lost land claims in the 1931 records fire. the grandchildren of Jonah Bell, people whose names had been erased because two powerful families had treated a town like a game board. Mara sat through every hearing. She listened to an old man describe how his grandmother died, believing her father's fishing dock had been stolen by paperwork no one could find. She listened to Jonah Bell's granddaughter, read from a letter her grandmother wrote after the fire, begging for wages. The county never paid. She listened until the fortune felt less like a gift and more like a room full of voices asking to be counted. When the judge asked whether Mara wished to contest the claims, she stood. "My family was wronged," she said. "Then my family wronged others to protect itself. I can't fix the first crime by hiding the second. I know what it feels like when someone with more power takes your home and tells you the law is on their side." The settlement removed almost half the estate. Mara kept enough to live, enough to restore Blackpine, and enough to build something that did not require hiding. She used part of the remaining inheritance to create the Vale Housing Fund for young adults without family support. The first building opened in Greyhaven in a restored brick block near the marina. Every apartment had a locking door, a real mattress, a stocked kitchen, and a mirror by the bathroom sink. On every mirror, Mara placed a handwritten note. "You are still here. That means there is more story." It was something her mother had said once, after Mara failed a math test and cried like the world had ended. The restoration of Blackpine House took 16 months. Mara hired Noah Flint to lead the structural work, not because she trusted him completely, because he knew the house, because he had built the tunnel that saved her life, and because trust, Mara was learning, was not a door you opened once. It was a lock you checked every day. Their agreement was simple: no secrets, no unsent reports, no photographs without permission, no forgiveness demanded as payment for usefulness. The east wing was rebuilt with salvaged cedar. The roof was replaced. The porch was lifted and braced. The central chimney remained. The vault door stayed open in the basement, empty shelves visible, a brass plaque beside it telling the whole story, including Samuel Ward's confession and Jonah Bell's death. Mara refused to turn the vault into a shrine to treasure. It became a warning. The blank grave behind the house was engraved for Laurel Ward, also known as Julia Vale. She chose a smaller life. She was brave enough to leave. She was loved. Mara kept the Nissan Sentra. She parked it under the pines where she could see it from the front porch. It was ugly, rusting, and worth almost nothing. But she kept it because the girl who had slept in that back seat had known something money could easily make a person forget. A locked door is not a small thing. A full fridge is not a small thing. Being seen as a person is not a small thing. On the day Blackpine House reopened, rain moved across the bluff in silver sheets. The restored roof held. The windows glowed warm. The porch did not sag. Inside, the parlor fire burned under the rebuilt mantel, and on that mantel sat the brass compass. Its glass had been repaired, but the crack remained visible, sealed like a scar. Mara opened the lid. For the first time since she was a child, the needle did not tremble. It settled toward the center of the house, not north, not west, down toward the foundation. Mara understood then that her mother had not given her a broken thing. Laurel had given her a question. Lydia had given her a door. The house had given her the answer. But only the truth can keep the roof from collapsing later. Outside, rain tapped softly against the new roof of Blackpine House. It ran down the cedar siding, soaked into the repaired porch, and darkened the gravel beside the old Nissan, where the back seat sat empty at last. Mara closed the compass. The house held. So did she.